Donald Trump sat for his first television interview since being indicted on 37 charges related to his alleged mishandling of classified documents. Here's the former president defending himself to Fox's Bret Baier.
I've had a lot of things in there. I will go through those boxes. I have to go through those boxes. I take out personal things. As far as the levels and all, everything was declassified because I had the right to declassify. You want to talk about a mess? Take a look at Biden, where he's got 1,850 boxes. He has boxes stored in Chinatown in D.C. He has boxes stored at Penn Center, and he has boxes under his Corvette and around his Corvette sitting in a garage for years where it was very seriously classified. I have every right to have those boxes. This is purely a Presidential Records Act. This is not a criminal thing. In fact, the New York Times of all had a story just the other day that the only way NARA could ever get this stuff, this back, would be please, 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 could we have it back?
And they
please,
asked for that.
Because they have no, we
they
were
did
talking.
Ask for it.
No, and
they said,
I gave
can you
them
give the documents back?
And we were talking.
And then they said they went to DOJ to subpoena you to get them
Which
back.
They've never done before.
Right.
And in
but
all
why not
fairness,
just hand them over then?
Because I had boxes. I want to go through the boxes and get all my personal things out. I don't want to hand that over to NARA yet. And I was very busy, as you've sort of seen.
Yeah, but
I've
according
been
to
very,
the
very
indictment,
busy.
you then tell this aide to move to other locations after telling your lawyers to say you'd fully complied with the subpoena when you hadn't.
But before I send boxes over, I have to take all of my things out. These boxes were interspersed with all sorts of things, golf shirts, clothing, pants, shoes. There were many things.
Okay, there's a lot there. So first off, I just want to say, obviously the fact that someone else did something wrong does not absolve you of your responsibility for also having done something wrong. Moreover, of course, it is the case that Donald Trump escalated the situation by not turning over the documents when they were requested. That meaningfully distinguishes him from Mike Pence and Joe Biden. It is also true that the things that Mike Pence and Joe Biden did are also violations that could have been prosecuted. Mike Pence, the decision was made not to prosecute. Joe Biden, it's still pending. But there is a bit of a selective prosecution issue here, even if you acknowledge that what Donald Trump did was worse. But what was so smart about what Bret asked there was he opened up a conversation about the actual timeline of events. Donald Trump tried to frame this as a question of, well, I just needed more time to go through the boxes. There were golf shirts and khakis in there. And I had to make sure I didn't accidentally turn over some khakis to the National Archive or what have you. His talks with the National Archives began in late 2020. He moved to Mar-a-Lago in January of 2021, obviously, after he lost the election. The archives alert Trump's team to missing materials in May of 2021. He returns some documents, including he offers to return the letters from Kim Jong-un in May of 2021. He gets an official warning from the archives of consequences at the end in late 2021. Okay, this is an entire year now that has gone by. At the beginning of 2022, the archives retrieved 15 boxes in which there is sensitive material. At this point, they're like, oh, we know now that there was stuff that you weren't supposed to have in some of these archives. A year into this inquiry. And so this idea, and then we all know what happens from there. He ends up getting, the raid happens in August of last year, and this becomes a media frenzy. So at what point is Trump going to be forced to reckon with the idea that he doesn't have unlimited time to just sort through highly confidential material without there being some consequence for it?
Right, and honestly, I don't know why he's even taking questions on this matter. Like, Trump knows. So Trump knows not to release his tax returns. He says, but I'm in I have an issue with the IRS. There's a legal matter. It would not be in my legal benefit to release this information right now. That is correct. Maybe it's not correct from the normal procedures for campaigns, but from a legal theory, yes. I would think so, too, is talking to Bret Baier or anyone else about this in any detail right now. Like, the prosecutors are taking notes. Stop talking.
Yeah.
Stop talking, because then they'll get you on some lesser, they'll say, oh, but you obstructed justice because now you're saying this, but in that interview you said a different thing. Even if they can't prove the underlying case, he's hanging himself every time he gives more information about the situation.
Yes.
Don't do that, but
Yeah, and look, he fundamentally, the thing that makes him different from the others is he has an obstruction of justice case. The others didn't obstruct justice. You can say that they were reckless.
Right.
And then to be clear, other folks who took classified information but did not do treason, were not trying to give them to another country. There was the fellow that it was an NSA employee who took the documents home. I talk about him a lot because this case boggles my mind. Took the documents home just to get ahead of work on the weekend, and he had to spend 5.5 years in jail. There are people who didn't obstruct justice and didn't do espionage who, regardless, went to jail under the Espionage Act. So you can make that case for why Biden, Pence, and Hillary Clinton should have been prosecuted. But Donald Trump has now added to that by literally obstructing justice. And the tough thing that he has to contend with, that even some of his more sympathetic not defenders, but some people who are more sympathetic legal analysts, like Alan Dershowitz, say his biggest problem is that he is on tape admitting that he knows he was not supposed to be in possession of these documents, contrary to what he's saying in this interview, which is they're my documents and I was allowed to look at them and I was allowed to sort through them and have them. He admits on tape that he's not supposed to have them, and yet he retains them for months.
Yeah, it's not good. Yeah, it's not good legally for his own strategy. It's baffling. It's really baffling. And Republicans are going to be continuing to feel the frustration of this being the situation that he has given. Yeah. Even, you can have that concern. I have that concern. We vocalize this concern every day. Of course, the federal government has been weaponized in various ways, and there are biases in place, and there is a chilling of speech, and there are due process issues, and and yes, they were out to get Trump on anything. And there's a lot of things that were less persuasive and convincing than this. But the bottom line is Trump walked right into he walked headfirst into this. No other rational, even remotely competent political official in either party would have put themselves in this situation. And now it's going to be an issue for Republicans to deal with.
I got to say, this is one of the first times that I've seen him look this weak. I don't know that this kind of excuse making is the best strategic choice for him going forward.
Right.
I almost feel like there's a world where he says, look, I made a mistake, but they didn't have to throw the book at me. Mm-hmm. No one's ever arrested a former president before. Yeah, sure, maybe I should have complied earlier, but I had no sense that they were going to send a SWAT team to my house, and I had no sense that it was going to escalate like this because it's just never been the course of how presidents are treated before. Hillary Clinton, you can talk about some of the other ways that people have handled issues. Hillary Clinton did delete emails. That's the destruction of documents. Why? I mean, you can kind of play in that space, I think, a little bit more competently, but so directly contradicting what we have you saying on tape.
Yeah.
And continuing to double down in this way, it does start to feel like a distraction from more substantive issues. He could take a line of attack that says, well, the real issue here is the Espionage Act. The real issue here is the overclassification of documents. There are news developments with Julian Assange happening this week. I stand with Americans who want more freedom and transparency in government and who don't want to punish whistleblowers. And I think that we should get rid of this whole thing altogether. I think that would feel like a more productive and more powerful position to be making
and
this argument.
And if he had done more while he was in office to pardon Julian Assange and do more on the freeing whistleblowers, that would have been a more credible claim. We have another clip from that interview to play where Trump addresses a pretty probing question from Bret Baier about why he put in all the people he put in who now don't think very highly of him. Let's watch.
In 2016, you said that. I'm going to surround myself with only the best and most serious people.
Well, I did do that.
This
and we
time,
had tremendous, we had the best economy we've ever had. The world has ever seen.
Your Vice President, Mike Pence, is running against you.
Yeah.
Your Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, she's running against you. Your former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, said he's not supporting you. You mentioned National Security Advisor John Bolton. He's not supporting you either. You mentioned Attorney General Bill Barr, says you shouldn't be president again, calls you the consummate narcissist and troubled man. You recently called Barr a gutless pig. Your second defense secretary is not supporting you, called you irresponsible. This week, you and your White House called your White House Chief of Staff, John Kelly, weak and ineffective and born with a very small brain. You called your acting White House Chief of Staff, Mick Mulvaney, a born loser. You called your first Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, dumb as a rock, and your first Defense Secretary, James Mattis, the world's most overrated general. You called your White House Press Secretary, Kayleigh Canadian, milquetoast, and multiple times you've referred to your Transportation Secretary, Elaine Chao, as Mitch McConnell's China-loving wife. So, why did you hire all of them in the first place?
Because I hired 10 to 1 that were fantastic. We had...
I don't know. I think that's a really good and important question that Trump has no answer for, and if anything can break the spell that he has over Republicans, I would hope it would be this. Not that careerists have now chosen a different, are sailing on a different barge or whatever, but that he picked people that he himself thinks suck.
Yeah, Chris Christie tried out this line of attack. He was saying, it's one of two things. Either he's a very bad judge of character and he doesn't pick good people, or he's the worst leader there ever has been because he did pick good people and then they had bad results. Also, quick question, if someone is a born loser, that seems to suggest that he was a loser when you hired him.
Right. Like he went off on Alyssa Farah Griffin, who is a co-host of The View and is on CNN a lot, a very anti-Trump Republican voice. She guest hosted this show a lot, worked in his administration, and he particularly denounces her for, changing direction as the wind changes, blowing in a different direction. I think that's fair to level at a calm staffer seeking an opportunity, but some of this was ideological. John Bolton he picked him and he did not pursue the agenda he wanted. He feels that way about Elaine Chao and Mitch McConnell, that they're not part of, if you didn't have so it's beyond just, well, now they're saying, they've chosen, they're doing different things now. It also speaks to the fundamentals of the trouble he had enacting his agenda because he did not pick people who shared his views on foreign policy and other subjects. And that's why he should not ultimately be trusted to do this again, because it's not, he talks from the right-wing populist perspective, he talks a good game, but he did not execute because he didn't pick people who would execute on his vision.
Yeah, a little humility would go a long way, saying, I was an outsider candidate. I didn't know what I was doing. I deferred to expertise when I was picking my staff, and it bit me in the tuchus, and now I want a second bite at the apple. I'm practiced and expert at this. I've been president before, and now I know how to pick people who can actually execute my agenda.
All right, more Rising right after this. Stay with us.